I'm going to share with you today how Mrs. Curwen teaches her students the staff, and this is done through the preliminary courses before a child has ever reached step one. The staff is not learned until a child has the full understanding of an interval of a third. So at this point, before we introduce the staff, they would understand how they can find a third on the piano. They would know how it sounds. They would have also been sent home with exercises within their lessons to find any sound on the piano and name the sounds going up in thirds, or to find a sound on the piano and to be able to name the sounds going down in thirds. So they're very familiar with the interval of a third at this point. The child is also hopefully beginning to understand the relationship between the piano and the music. So the child should be understanding that the piano makes sounds. These sounds have names, and in order to know which sounds to play, we must be told which sounds to play. So now we're beginning this relationship between the sounds on the piano and the music on the page. Mrs. Curwen tells her students that every sound on the piano is represented by a line on a page. Here's a line. The distance from one line to another line is the interval of a third. And so Mrs. Curwen will have her students drawing what she calls ladders. So we're going to start with a ladder of 6 lines. And the child can choose any sound, and that's going to represent our bottom line. Because as long as we know one of the lines in our ladder, we can figure out the rest of the lines. So we're going to say that the bottom line is an F. So we then ask the child, if this bottom line is an F, which sound is a third above the F? It's an A, and the child will usually look down at the keyboard and use the keyboard for help through this process. And what is a third above an A? A C, and then a third above a C, an E, and then they can go on and finish out this ladder. We're going to repeat this same exercise, except we're going to start at the top and then go down. Here's a line. We're going to draw 6 lines going down, and we're going to do the same thing. Going down is usually a little trickier for the students than going up the ladder. So just like before, we're going to choose any sound on the piano, and we're going to assign it to the top line. Okay, the child chose A. So what is a third below A? F. What's a third below F? D. And so on and so forth until the child has completed this ladder. The ladders will slowly get larger. We'll add a few lines. And now we're going to do an 11-line ladder. Let's draw 11 lines here. And with the teacher's direction, we're going to choose the bottom line to represent the sound G. We're going to go up this entire ladder and ask the child, what is the sound a third above a G? It's a B. What's a third above B? D. What's a third above D? F. So on and so forth until we have all the sounds labeled on all the lines. So now the child's gaining this concept that every sound is represented by a line, and as long as we know one line of the ladder, we can figure out the sounds that go with the rest of the lines. And also what we've just done with the child is we have shown them that they already know all the lines on the staff. This is Mrs. Curwen's way of allowing them to see that the staff is continuous. Since it's hard to look at 11 lines and not kind of get jumbled up or mixed up as to which line is which, we shorten that middle line and we call that middle C. So middle C is the first sound that the child can associate with a sound on the piano. So this is just the basic premise that Mrs. Curwen uses. She goes on to talk about the C clef in an effort to allow the child to never forget this relationship from the treble to the bass, that it is continuous. And then she goes on to suggest an order in which to learn the lines and which ones to use first as landmarks, which happen to be middle C, and then she goes on to high F and low G to give the child landmarks. But at this point, Mrs. Curwen has given the child all the tools that they need to understand every line and every space on the staff.